Welcome back to the First and Goal podcast, everybody. I am Sam Levine, back here with Mitch Weinberg after the summer. How you doing?
All's good. I mean, it's been 2 months, I want to say, since our last podcast together, but I'm excited to get it rolling. A lot's been happening.
Yes, sir. And today we are 12 days out from the first Sunday in the 2021 NFL season. So in honor of that, let's preview the entire NFC. The next Friday, we will be previewing the entire AFC for you guys. So let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. First off, we have the NFC North. And starting off, we have the Green Bay Packers, who are coming off an NFC championship year and a drama-filled offseason. I mean, listen, usually when you get to the NFC championship, it's all smiles, it's happy. I mean, obviously you want to get to the Super Bowl, but most times it's a successful season for the most part. For the Packers, as we all know, they had a very dramatic offseason as no one really knew if Aaron Rodgers was coming back.
I mean, yeah, you talk about like Aaron Rodgers, and I think this is going to be a very reoccurring theme with the Green Bay Packers. And I was convinced at some point Aaron Rodgers was just going to pick up and say, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. Goodbye. I'll host Jeopardy or whatever he would have done. Like there was a point in the offseason where I was convinced that he was just enjoying himself in Hawaii. Like, what is he doing? I was shocked to see him at training camp. When I saw him, I kind of was just confused. I'm like, he decided to come back. What's the deal? Because before that was before all the contract stuff. So now that we know that Aaron Rodgers, this is it. This is the Michael Jordan last dances, him and Devontae Adams posted on his Instagram story.
So obviously a lot of drama going around, a lot of public drama, really wasn't kept private whatsoever. But now they're back. Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, they're both back. They are both locked in and ready to go for this season. And the Green Bay Packers are the favorite to win the NFC North, just like they have been for pretty much the last 20 years. I mean, this is not a surprise right now, and we both have them winning this division they have been crowned king for so long, especially since Aaron Rodgers has got here. But they are locked for the division. However, that doesn't mean much to them because, like we said, this is a consistent thing we see with the Packers. This is not something new. Winning the division would not be some great achievement. It's about the Super Bowl this year. And, we're not making any earth-shattering claims by saying that. This is Super Bowl or bust. Aaron Rodgers said it himself. We play in Titletown. It's a disappointment every year if we don't bring home a championship. He said that, and it couldn't be more true to this year. Not only is it the last chance, looks like the last chance, at least for them to get a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. Even if it wasn't, it'd still be Super Bowl or bust because they've been to 4 NFC championships in the last decade, ever since they won their Super Bowl in 2010, 2011, and they have yet to get back to the Super Bowl. They are wasting talent. Aaron Rodgers, they need to get Aaron Rodgers another Super Bowl, and there's no possible way that this team can be satisfied if they don't.
Well, I think not only the team, but also the fans. I don't see how, for example, you could be satisfied after seeing the success that Green Bay has brought just in general to just come up short every single year. It's unacceptable. And, Aaron Rodgers isn't the problem. I could see Aaron Rodgers going to a different location and finding a way to win. Like, people go to Green Bay to play with Aaron Rodgers because they know they have a chance to win. They do not go there to go to the NFC Championship game. They're not there on a vacation. I spoke to a bunch of people today about, people don't come to beautiful Miami, Florida to go 6-10. They go to Wisconsin to win because no one wants to go to Wisconsin unless you're like obviously there to win. You look at Randall Cobb. I mean, he was in Houston, but let's say he was somewhere else. Like he could have chosen to win anywhere. Well, I request a trade anywhere because he was a free agent, bear in mind. He chose to go back to Green Bay because he knows they have a chance at winning. And I think that, as you said, Super Bowl or bust, it's going to be a reoccurring theme with quite a few teams with aging talent. And Green Bay Packers is the epiphany, like the perfect definition of aging talent. But like this is one of their final years where it's like, okay, you're either winning it or like collapse and redo it.
Yeah, this year really is the major storyline. If you could pick out one major storyline from the entire NFL, this year, it has to be Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I mean, that is the big thing that the entire NFL is watching for. Do they get Aaron Rodgers a second ring? Do they not? If they don't, what happens after this? If they do, what happens after this? There are so many questions and so many things up in the air. Let's talk about their record. I predict they're going to go around 13-4 and 12-5. They do have a really difficult schedule this year. However, them being, stellar team, one of the best and most talented rosters in the NFL, I do think they will come out with one of those more prestigious, higher ranking records. They do play teams like the Rams and which is obviously going to be a very tough matchup going up against a defense that is just blistering. Also teams like San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Arizona, Kansas City, Seattle. So they do have a lot of tough opponents. However, I absolutely believe they'll be able to come away with a win in a good, significant amount of those games to get around a 13-4, 12-5 record.
I mean, I don't have my record that high, but again, as you mentioned, when you measure the offense, like I'm probably gonna talk about this about a few teams in the NFC because there's quite a few teams like this. They have a high-powered offense, which is perfectly fine. You can have a high-powered offense, but if your defense isn't good, you cannot win football games. It's truly that simple. And the Packers,
I wouldn't say they have a bad defense.
No. I'm not saying they have a bad defense, but I'm saying that they need like an above average defense. That's how you can get into those higher win range, in my opinion. Like having a high powered offense and like a pretty mediocre defense, that gets you into the playoffs. That's exactly what the Packers have. Lucky for them, they have a few rather more simplistic games. You look at the NFC North, they don't look too good this year, except for there's one team that personally I'm a fan of. That probably will do pretty well. And I think Green Bay can blow by them. They have a few very difficult games. As you mentioned, LA and San Francisco. Those are no cakewalk games. That's not those are games that Green Bay can, and in my opinion, might lose depending on like how the Rams offense, how Matt Stafford transitions, and if Jimmy Garoppolo is starting. If not, it's Trey Lance doing well. Like there's a few transitional things, but I still think they win this division, but I don't love them as much as Sam. I think that they're probably in the 12-11 win range. That's I think the Packers will make a statement in the playoffs because Aaron Rodgers, similar to Tom Brady, like just turns it on and makes an amazing run. But I just don't know how well they'll fare in the regular season.
I understand that point just because their schedule is much more difficult than it has been in years past. Listen, this team just didn't really change though, and they're coming off 2 13-3 seasons, and in 2019, their schedule wasn't that easy, and then in 2020, their schedule wasn't that easy, and then in 2019, that wasn't their best year at all, and they still went 13-3. This is a team that has it all. This is absolutely a top 5, top 3 most talented roster in the entire NFL, even on the defensive side of the ball. I know that statistically, they might not be a top 8 defense, but I'd say they're definitely a fringe top 10 defense with guys like Jair Alexander, Zadarius Smith, Kenny Clark, Adrian Amos. I mean, they have a lot of guys that can make a difference. And on any given day, on any given game, they can have a really good game and sometimes win games for the Packers. So I'm not saying they have the best defense in the league. And I'm not saying their defense is going to, hold you under 20 every single week, but they do have a defense that can step up and win the big games. So that's why I think they're going to go 13-4, 12-5, just because they're a very complete team. And then, of course, you have that offense, which no one is questioning is absolutely top 3, top 2 offense in the NFL. So we said they're going to win the division. Now let's quickly go through who we think the MVP of the team will be, the breakout player on the team, and who we think the best addition from this past offseason will be. I'll go first. My MVP is Aaron Rodgers. You'd be wrong to say it's anyone else. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers we're talking about. Come on. My breakout player, Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary is an excellent, or last year, he ended the season with an excellent push. He really came on strong towards the end of the year. And that was kind of expected coming out of the draft for him. He was a guy with a lot of raw talent, but you saw the potential. And that's what we're seeing so far in the first 2 years of his career. Slow start, but at the end of the second year, we really saw what he could be. And going into this third year, I think he's really going to become a full-time starter and a really good player for the Packers. And then best addition, I think, is Randall Cobb. Now, as a Packers fan, I'm not really happy with the offseason that we had whatsoever. So, yes, bringing Randall Cobb back is awesome. Love to have that guy in the building, really high character player. But I'm not sure how much of an impact any of these guys that we brought in will have. I mean, I don't even know how much of an impact Randall Cobb will have. So, yeah, I think he'll be the best new player that we added, but I don't know how much of a difference he will actually make when it comes to games and wins.
I mean, when I was looking at like most impactful addition, there's certain teams, Tampa being one, Green Bay being one, like high contending teams, like they didn't bring in too much and it made it very hard. So we'll go through my list very quickly. MVP Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I don't really think there's much to say about that. He is the best player on the Packers. MVP in IRL last year. So boom, I don't really know if you can really argue that. My breakout star this year is AJ Dillon. I still think RB2s are very valuable.
The quad father.
League, the quad father. I think Mike Davis might get a little offended. Same with Saquon. Like there's so many people. Like they're massive thighs.
Everyone's the quad father.
Massive.
Everyone's the quad zone.
And yeah, I think that having a good RB2 really helps you. I mean, we can look at last year. Not saying Aaron Jones was getting hurt, but Mike Davis, Christian McCaffrey, both of them in the backfield, like that could have been very good for Carolina. Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, two great teams, Rojo and Leonard Fournette. Now AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones. I think that can be very versatile for the Packers. And then the best addition, Eric Stokes. I mean, certain teams now like to have more than 3 wide receivers. Some of them will even put out 4. So, having a fourth corner is very important. I think Eric Stokes can contend and is a great corner out of Georgia that they drafted this year.
I agree with everything you said. I honestly really like the AJ Dillon pick. It's to me, it's between AJ Dillon and Rashawn Gary for that spot. I will say though, on the Eric Stokes point, yeah, I'm a fan of him. He's super athletic, and I think athletic corners, are good because that's something to build off of. But I think he's gonna get absolutely toasted this year.
Probably, but
I don't see.
We'll see.
Everything coming out of camp and his college tape, like, yeah, he's got potential, he's got talent, but I just don't see him being successful this year. It's not going to happen this year. The overall season goal for this team is obvious. It's win the Super Bowl or no dice. That's the bottom line. They have to win the Super Bowl for this season to not be an absolute disappointment. There's nothing else to build off of. Even if they get to the Super Bowl and lose by 1 point, there's nothing to build off of. It's win now. There's nowhere else to go. They have to win. So let's keep it moving here, going on to the Chicago Bears. Now, this is kind of a polarizing team to me because at the end of last year, like the end of the regular season, I was super down on them. I was like, fire Matt Nagy, fire Ryan Pace, clear house, do everything. I still kind of am, but they had a great draft. Justin Fields looked okay in the preseason. I think going with Andy Dalton was the right move. So I actually give Matt Nagy some praise for that because, we agree. Justin Fields is not NFL ready, and I think you can only hurt him by throwing him in too early.
But the game's too slow for him.
But it's too slow for him, right? So, yeah, there's always that. So I have very mixed feelings about this team because, on the one hand, I still don't think Matt Nagy's a good coach. On the other hand, you have Ryan Pace, who I really don't think is a good GM, but he just, gave them a great draft and gave them potentially their franchise quarterback, potentially their franchise tackle, and Tevin Jenkins in the second round at pick 39 when he was projected to go in the first round. So this is a team that's kind of a tweener because they have a lot of really good defensive talent. Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, especially being on the younger side, Eddie Goldman, a bunch of really talented players. And then you have Justin Fields, who is, again, a young, talented player, but, he's a developmental franchise quarterback. This is not a guy you're going to throw in right away like Patrick, or even not like Patrick Mahomes. You could talk about Patrick Mahomes in his second year, but even Patrick Mahomes had a year. So this is a team where they made the playoffs last year, I think pretty much on dumb luck. It's not going to happen again. I don't see it happening again. So where do you go after that? What do? You have a lot of bigger contracts on the defensive side. Do you go all out rebuild? Will Matt Nagy keep his job through a rebuild? Will Ryan Pace keep his job through a rebuild? So I think there's a lot. I don't think they're making the playoffs this year. And even if they do, they're going to be a first round exit. To me, it's not as much about this season for the Bears. It's about what does Matt Nagy and the players that Ryan Pace drafted do in this season that affects if they keep their jobs in the offseason. That's the biggest thing for the Bears, in my mind, going into this season.
And the Bears have, in my mind, one of two options. Either they go all out push for the playoffs or they tank. I don't think the Bears are a team that can afford to be picking at 14. Like, this is like, there's so much to like offensively, even still. Darnell Mooney, potential breakout candidate, or at least all my TikTok says so. Allen Robinson makes every single quarterback he's played with good. Justin Fields will probably be one of the best will be the best quarterback he's ever played with. Like, he's played with Blake Bortles. Let's see, who else? Jay Cutler? No, that was before.
Mitch Trubisky. Like, that doesn't work.
Yeah, like there's been no good quarterbacks he's played with. And I think having Justin Fields gives you potential for Allen Robinson to return if he looks good. If Justin Fields doesn't look good, Allen Robinson will go elsewhere. But again, I still think Allen Robinson is one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League, no debate. Defensively, though, their front seven looks monstrous. Like, of course, not a shocker there. But then we look at their secondary. That got a bit shoddy this offseason. They cut, what was it? They cut Kyle Fuller. Like, what were they doing? I do not know. There might have been some.
They needed to make space to bring in Andy Dalton.
Oh my goodness gracious, Andy. Andy Dalton's another conversation for another time. But ultimately, there's the secondary shot. Unless they're just going to bring pressure and do like a 4-6 defense, then they're kind of in a position where they're mediocre. And that's not where Allen Robinson wants to be. It's not where Chicago wants to be. So will Matt Nagy keep his job after a 9-8, 8-9 season? I don't know. Maybe if the numbers are good, he'll stay. But if they're not good, and I don't see why they should keep him. I don't really know the coach merry-go-round right now, but carousel. Sorry, but I don't know who he could be replaced by.
Another good point. Just think that's worth adding in. Allen Robinson is not on a long-term deal right now.
Oh yeah, franchise.
Exactly. He's on a franchise tag. So that's another thing that would kind of put them in a sticky situation. If Allen Robinson, remember, who did want out, or not, maybe not wanted out, but was not happy with his situation during the season last year. If that continues throughout this year and into the offseason, he doesn't return. That puts the Bears in another situation where, okay, they might have to rebuild because you lose your best offensive player. Okay, on the defense, you have Roquan Smith, you have Khalil Mack, Eddie Goldman. Front seven's still good. The defensive backfield isn't. But you're looking at a team who has a front seven and nothing else. So that sounds like a rebuild to me. So very interesting stuff here. Regardless of whether they sneak into the playoffs, Allen Robinson, his decision, whether he stays or goes, could have a huge impact on the Bears' future. Now, this is a really interesting team also because I mentioned they were a tweener. And me and Mitch both wrote down our ceiling and our floor for each team. And this team, my ceiling was 10-7. My floor was 5-12. Mitch's ceiling was 11-6. His floor was 4-13. Those are huge ranges. I mean, we talk about them being a tweener team. They could either sneak into the playoffs if their defense carries them and their offense is serviceable, which is what we what the scenario we're both thinking about in our ceiling. And then in a floor situation, their defense is, good, mediocre, and then their offense is an absolute dumpster fire. That's the floor. And it could go either way. I mean, there's no telling how it will go because, and that's also clear evidence by our predictions. Mine is 8-9, yours is 7-10, like smack dab right in the middle. So this is a team that could go either way. I don't see them making the playoffs, but again, they might sneak in. They might sneak in.
I mean, the NFC always manages to be a bit iffy. They have good teams and a pile of mediocre teams. So if could the Bears sneak in at 9-8? I wouldn't put it past the National Football Conference because unlike the AFC, they're not super competitive at sometimes. But there's a lot. I apologize. I don't know why people are calling me right now, but there's just so much mediocrity, and I don't really know where to put the Bears. They could sneak in, but I somehow highly doubt that. My not N, but MVP.
MVP.
He absolutely torched them. That was so funny.
That was so funny.
But
revenge
as the backup. And then as my MVP, we have Allen Robinson. My bad. Again, Allen Robinson, not even close. Like probably arguably best player on the Bears. You could probably say Khalil Mack. I know that's who you have. Breakout Darnell Mooney. That was pretty self-explanatory. I mean, I saw him torch Jalen Ramsey. I know you saw him too. It's all over Bleacher Report Gridiron, who follows me on TikTok. And then best addition, without a doubt, is Justin Fields. I would put Tevin Jenkins, but unfortunately, he's out for quite a while. I think the whole year. Could be wrong.
Yeah, I was gonna do the same. My best ad is Justin Fields also, and that I feel like that's such a lame one. Like if I was the Bears,
what else are you gonna put though?
I know. They really didn't add anyone else. I was gonna put Tevin Jenkins, and I was like, oh, that'd be a good one because he might start in the second round pick. But yeah, so that's kind of lame. Because if I was the Bears coach, I probably wouldn't even play Justin Fields at all. But you know what? It is what it is. And then the breakout, I have Cole Kmet. So I'm switching it up a little. With Jimmy Graham out of the picture, Cole Kmet is going to step in and be the starting tight end right away. In Notre Dame, he was really good. He was a very good all-around tight end, a lot of talent, went in the second round last year to the Bears, had time to sit behind Jimmy Graham, one of the best tight ends of our generation, learn some things, take in some information before he really got to start. And this year, I see him explode, maybe not exploding onto the scene and being an all-out superstar right away, but I think he's going to be a good player, maybe like a mini kind of TJ Hawkinson season, not as good as TJ Hawkinson was last year, but similar to that, where he's a very productive tight end in all facets of the game for his offense and a very reliable target for his quarterback as well. So for the season goal for this one, this is tough. I put a question mark next to this sentence, and I said return to playoffs because, sure, returning to the playoffs would be nice for the Bears, but what does it really mean? I mean, next year they're not going for the playoffs. The year after that, they're not going for the playoffs. And what it's really all about is developing Justin Fields. They spent the investment on a quarterback, 10th overall pick. This needs to be it, right? They traded up a lot of picks and a lot of capital to go get Mitch Trubisky. Didn't work out. Before that, they had Jay Cutler, Mike Glennon. I mean, the list goes on and on with failed quarterback projects. It's it's like a Broncos short list, but over more time. I mean, we could go into the Broncos short list, but it's over more time than the Broncos list. Less quarterbacks, but over more time. A lot less quarterbacks, but over more seasons. Got to make sure Justin Fields works out. You got to make Justin Fields your franchise quarterback for the next 10 years. That's the goal. That's the main focus, developing Justin Fields. So now let's keep it moving, going on to the Minnesota Vikings. I think the main question for this team is, can they consistently play good football and get back to the playoffs? Because no one's going to deny there's talent on this team. You got Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Danielle Hunter, Harrison Smith. There are some really good Pro Bowl level players, and in some cases, all pro talent players that are on this roster that deserve to be on winning teams. But for whatever reason, I think coaching actually has a lot to do with it. I'm not sure how good of a coach Mike Zimmer actually is, but for whatever reason, they, especially last year, they weren't able to play consistently good football. I mean, they started out the year at 1-5, then they went on a tear. I think they were either 4-2, 5-1, something like that. They had a very good winning record, and they like went 1-3 to end the year. So I mean, completely black and white stretches that really tell you this is an inconsistent team, but they have the talent to win games. I mean, they did win meaningful games. They beat the Packers, who went to the NFC Championship right after their bye week. They've got the talent on this roster. It's just, I think, about coaching. Can they get their act together, win meaningful football games, and maybe get a wild card spot?
I think the wild card spot is the perfect spot for Minnesota. I mean, their offense looks very good this year. Like COVID concerns, which is like a massive red flag if you've been following. I don't really want to go deep into it, but like beyond that, they're looking very good receiving, rushing, offensive line. Like it's all good. The defense is, sometimes they play well and most times they don't really, but the offense
Yo, great. Yo, what a great quote by Mitch Weinberg right there. Sometimes they play great, but most times not really.
not really. It's true. Like
It's excellent.
That's going right up on Instagram.
Yes, sir.
But they brought in Everson Griffin. They released him. What was the point of this? Why did you do this? Like the coaching decisions are very questionable. I mean, Mike Zimmer's been there for, I don't know, I want to say a couple years. He's been there at least since the Minneapolis Miracle, which feels like forever ago. That's as far as they've gotten in the playoffs. That team was a very, very good team. It's not the same now, but it was still a very, very good team. Now, I can't tell you that the defense is going to show up every Sunday and make a wild card team look good. But, this is an offense that can carry a team. So I have their record at 10-7, hopping in at the wild card spot like that. There's no, I mean, I put the Packers and the Vikings like it's one game apart, but the gap of talent, but like talented rosters overall between the Packers and the Vikings is massive. It's just that like I think the Vikings could sneak in like quite a few wins.
I'd also like to add, I think this is really going to enhance everyone's listening experience and your experience doing this podcast. So I look up Everson Griffin while you're talking. And on Wikipedia, his nickname says Everson Sack Daddy Griffin. So that's his nickname.
Why did we have to do this?
I didn't know that was his nickname. I just thought that would.
Never heard that in my life.
I'd never heard that in my life either. I just thought that would enrich the experience of everyone listening. So yeah, there you go. You learned something today. The more you know, you listen, you learn everything. You learn a lot of stuff listening to the First and Goal podcast, even the odd nicknames of former Minnesota Vikings edge rushers. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I think they're going to go 10-7 this year. I think they get a wild card spot. You look at this roster, they just scream wild card to me. Kirk Cousins, good quarterback, not great, not going to win games for you. Defense, inconsistent. Team, inconsistent, but a lot of talent. I really think, and then mix that in with the Green Bay Packers being above them in the division. This is a wild card team to me. That said, I do think they could pull off a couple wins if Dalvin Cook goes off in a game, if Justin Jefferson goes off in a game in the playoffs. So I do think they could be maybe a dangerous playoff team, not one that might get to the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, but they could make a little bit of noise. So I'm going with my MVP is Dalvin Cook. Again, a situation where put anyone else, maybe if you put Justin Jefferson, I can understand, maybe the new Hunter, but Dalvin Cook is a top 3 running back in the league. When he's healthy, he is extremely dangerous, and he could rip off any run and go for a touchdown. My breakout player is going to be Irv Smith Jr. This is a guy who was stuck, similar to Cole Kmet, was excellent in college. I mean, a really, really good player. great blocker, great receiver, and helped. Was on an Alabama team that was exceptional. So anytime you're getting a player, especially a skill position player from Alabama, big thumbs up. But he's a guy who has shown potential and shown flashes of excellence over the first 2 years of his career. Now with Kyle Rudolph on the Giants, he's the number one tight end on the depth chart. It's all him at that position. So I really think he's going to get his time to shine and show that he is a very talented and a very, very good tight end in the NFL. Then my best ad is going to be Dalvin Tomlinson. This is a big player. Dalvin Tomlinson is a huge run-stuffing nose tackle that will just fill gaps and absolutely clog running lanes for the opposing offenses. I really like him. I thought, there was a glimmer of hope in my soul that maybe the Packers would finally address defensive line and bring in Dalvin Tomlinson. And I would have loved that, because not only would we have gotten defensive line, but it would have helped our endless running defense issues. So that would have been great, but I'm a big fan of his, and I really think he's going to have a huge impact on this team and defense.
I kind of just hit all the major points. MVP, Dalvin Cook. Again, everyone loves the second-year wide receiver. It seems to have become an obsession everywhere, but I wouldn't call him the MVP just yet. Because Kirk Cousins, again, I don't want to get into the whole issues, but there are issues that say he goes down. They have Kellen Mond, who also has these same issues. So if he goes down, what? You're telling me Sean Mann's on the scene. I don't know, Cam Newton. I feel like he probably would have the same issue, but again, I don't know everyone's personal statement. They just kind of were in the news because, well, that's a them problem. Then my breakout star, Day Westbrook. I believe he should be wide receiver 3 or 4. Again, similar to Scotty Miller. I think he can get meaningful targets on a
Don't remind me. Don't bring it back.
Oh, I'm sorry. Michael Gallup, a similar Michael Gallup role. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Sorry. A similar Michael Gallup role to a quality wide receiver 3, adding to a very nice West Coast offense that they have going. Well, for me, down there in Minnesota. And then my breakout star is Xavier Woods. I think that he's a great coverage safety, zone coverage mainly, because I would not put a man-on-man with anybody, but I think he's a very good addition, considering that, sure, they re-signed Harrison Smith, but they lost Anthony Harris, which is quite unfortunate. And now they have another safety to pair Harrison Smith with, and the secondary looks the slightest bit better. Keyword slightest, because it's not very much better. And the goal that we have for them is make playoffs. Again, this is not a team that is anywhere close to rebuilding. This is a team that is ready to contend. I don't think that they need a high-level draft pick. That's not what this team needs. This team can go to the playoffs, as Sam said, and make some noise, but they're not content. They're not Super Bowl or bust. It's kind of make the playoffs and Minnesota's happy and the team looks good. So not really much more than that.
Yeah, make the playoffs, see what we can do. I mean, this isn't a team like the Packers. Well, Packers are a special case, but regardless, this isn't a team like the Packers with a quarterback who's going to be 37 now, a star wide receiver who's up for a new contract. Justin Jefferson is just in his second year out. Kirk Cousins in that all. I mean, you could obviously improve on Kirk Cousins, but he's serviceable for the time being. Daniil Hunter, still under 30. So a lot of their star players, a lot of their core pieces are under that 30 mark. So they definitely have time, right? Make the playoffs, see what you can do. It's not Super Bowl or bust at all. Now, rounding out the NFC North, we have can we even call this a team? I mean, the Detroit Lions. Listen, the one thing I like about the Lions is Dan Campbell. I mean, Dan Campbell is a dude. Dan Campbell is an absolute beast. I mean, if they come out and Dan Campbell takes control of this team, this is a disciplined team. This is a team that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And it really looks like the players are buying into Dan Campbell's system. I think this is a success, even if they go 0-17, because we all know this team is winning under 4 or 5 games. I mean, this is not a good team at all. Nothing is good about this team. So if we can see that, all right, this is the right head coach. All right, this is the right front office, because the front office is new as well. Then I think this year is a success, because they've got a long road ahead of them. They are just starting a rebuild that is going to take a lot of years. They just need to lay the foundation, and that foundation comes in the form of Dan Campbell.
I mean, yeah, Dan Campbell. I mean, we all saw the interview. Oh my God, tweet. The Lions got relegated to the CFL. Oh wait, that was a joke. I apologize. But no, I think that the Lions have quality players, but they do not have the quality players to make a playoff push, in my opinion, just yet. We look at DeAndre Swift, assuming hopefully he's healthy, and we look at, for my fantasy team's sake anyway, Jamal Williams, who's a fine RB2, as Sam is very well aware. The receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, yeah, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that's about it. And then TJ
Malik Raymond is their second wide receiver.
Who is even that?
A+.
Right, I thought a post. Rate the wide receiver room. 3 of their receivers have never caught a pass in the National Football League, and they're not.
Oh, yeah, great, excellent.
and their defense doesn't make it any better for them. Like, it's just a mess.
This team is bad, man.
It's a team that needs time to develop, and within the next few years, hopefully they will not be in the same situation. But you never know with Detroit. They're very unpredictable. At least their history says so.
Yeah, for all the line bashing that we do, and we like to have fun here, but they have some younger players that, could definitely become core pieces for their rebuild. Jeff Okudah did not have a good year last year, but listen, I think it's really hard for a rookie cornerback to have a good rookie season, or to have a good season. It's just difficult. We don't really see it a lot, because corner right now, nowadays, you could argue, and I don't think you'd be wrong, is probably the hardest position to successfully play and be elite at in the NFL. And it's really difficult on rookies, especially a guy like Jeff Okudah, who is forced to guard wide receiver ones right away. Not only that, but you're also in a division with Allen Robinson, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen on the Vikings, and Devontae Adams. So you had to play those guys 6 games a year. It was a tough year for Jeff Okudah, but I expect him to bounce back. You also have guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I do like. I do think he should have gone higher than the 4th round. He's got upside. TJ Hawkinson, already a great player. Penei Sewell, I have no idea how he lasted that far to 7. I mean, he was clearly a top 2 play. He was clearly a top 2 player in the draft. I mean, you could absolutely say he was the best player in the draft, and I'd be okay with that statement whatsoever. I mean, I'd be perfectly fine with it. DeAndre Swift, another really talented player. So and then to go along with a plethora of picks, right? So this is a team that has some players. Frank Ragnow has some players, but they've got to get to work. And I think this is a team that we might see steal some games, not against good teams, but upset some mediocre teams because of the system Dan Campbell is implementing. I think they're going to play a lot of really good team football. I think they're going to play some good defensive football and really tough, hard
football.
No.
Not
good defensive football. That's not what I mean. Sorry, let me rephrase. Not defensive football. I mean a very tough brand of football. I see them playing that, and very tough defensively. So I think that they could come away with some wins against, maybe that would surprise us a little bit. Even though they don't have the most talented roster. But regardless, if Dan Campbell can get people to buy into his system, I'm happy. I think that was a successful season.
I mean, again, this is a team that needs time to develop. They have pieces to a puzzle. They can fully trade a whole bunch of their players, get a bunch of picks, and have a young team like all over again. I mean, it feels like, when they traded away Matt Stafford, they're tanking for the next 4 years. So you never really know. But again, good team football, like aggressive, but it's not gonna be a contending year. It's probably going to be a very sour year in the Motor City, without a doubt in my mind. So MVP for the Detroit Lions. Well, I'm sorry to say that it's Frank Ragnow. Yes, that is a center, but offensive linemen deserve credit. So I will credit Frank Ragnow, who is a Pro Bowler. Breakout, I think Jeff Okudah, not only does he have to play, last year was it a rough campaign, but he also battled injuries a little bit. So it was, kind of like, oh, you wasted a third overall pick on him. Well, don't forget how good he was at the Ohio State. Like, I think that there's still a bunch of potential there. We can't just rule him out like social media loves to do, just like Jamar Chase, which we're not getting into this week, but next week, it's a whole big issue. Then best ad, I mean, Jared Goff, like, that is an upgrade from the quarterback they would have had if they didn't get Jared Goff in that trade. Like, they would have probably had to waste a pick on Justin Fields, which wouldn't have been worth it, in my opinion. I'm like, if they got Jared Goff in that trade, it's not worth it for the Lions to go after Fields, in my opinion.
Penei Sewell was definitely a better pick than Justin Fields would have been.
I think that Penei Sewell, like, might be like, you could say he's a steal. I mean, he went pick 7, so like, I don't really
Absolutely
know.
a steal.
As far as a steal in value, but steal overall, like,
not like overall, like all 7 rounds overall, but definitely value.
100%. I think that right now, at least from the tape, like, all Jamar Chase jokes aside, like, the Bengals not looking good. Like, Jamar Chase caught 1 pass in the preseason on, I think, 12 targets, I want to say.
Something like that.
And in training camp, not even preseason, but training camp, he also looked bad. So right now, Zach Taylor, like, last year, you went Joe Burrow, which was smart and all, but it's not going to be very fun when Jamar Chase is dropping pass and Joe Burrow's career is ruined because of his knee.
Listen, I really don't think that was the right decision, taking Jamar Chase. If you guys listen to the podcast for a while, we like offensive line. Offensive line is key, right? Especially tackle. And we saw that in the Super Bowl. We all had a front row seat for that. Don't have good offensive line. Doesn't matter who your quarterback is.
Why didn't I get invited? You bought $5,000 tickets and didn't invite me?
Just gonna ignore. We all saw it. Doesn't matter what quarterback or wide receivers you have. If the tackles don't play well, if the offensive line doesn't play well, your offense will not play well. So my MVP for the team is going to be TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson is an absolutely phenomenal player. Broke out last year, was a Pro Bowler, is absolutely a top 5 tight end in the league. And I only think he's going to continue to get better. He's a really good blocker, something that I think he'll improve upon this year, especially under Dan Campbell, who I really think is going to bring out like an animal side to him. TJ Hawkinson was a really good blocker last year. I think we're going to see a different side of TJ Hawkinson that is just an absolute dude. And I really think he's going to be blocking a lot more, which could decrease his receiving stats, even though I think he will still be a very productive receiver. But let's not overlook blocking, right? Like we just said, tight ends who can block are getting rarer and rarer, meaning their value continues to go up. Either way, though, tight ends who can block are extremely valuable in the NFL, and we cannot overlook that. I think TJ Hawkinson is going to be their best player this year. Then their breakout is DeAndre Swift. Swift honestly had a pretty good year last year, having 8 touchdowns. But it was cut short, or not cut short. He missed a few games due to injury right when he started to hit his stride, right? So if he stayed healthy for those last few games, we would have seen more of that elite potential. But this year, he's going to be healthy week 1. He's going to be coming back, and I really think he's going to ball out. Dan Campbell is going to be a guy. It's obvious. This is going to be a guy who wants to run the football, and DeAndre Swift is going to be the guy for the most part that they turn around and hand the ball off to. Also, he's an exceptional pass catcher, so he's going to have a big impact in the passing game as well. best add is Penei Sewell right off the bat. I honestly think Sewell he's gonna be a starter, no doubt, and I also think he's gonna be a very good tackle right away. Kind of like I mean, I'm not sure if he'll be better than Tristan Wirfs was right off the gate because that obviously great tackle, great rookie. I definitely think his potential is higher than Tristan Wirfs. In the end, I think he will be better than Tristan Wirfs, but I think it's going to be a similar situation where a rookie tackle is already a stronghold and is already a really good player for your team on the end. So the season goal for this team is going to just be have young players continue to grow, continue to show potential, and then get a high pick to potentially get your franchise quarterback of the future. And let's not forget, they are armed with a plethora of draft picks, a couple first-round picks, so they can move up and down the board as they please. If their guy is still there, if their guy is gone, who knows? And if they don't get the first overall pick naturally, maybe they trade up to go get it, to get Sam Howell, to get Spencer Rattler, whoever their guy is. So getting out of the NFC North, let's move to the next division, which is the NFC South, starting with the team that won the Super Bowl, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was crazy that they were able to, somehow they manipulated the cap and returned all 22 of their starters from last season. So there's not much to say about this team other than it's Super Bowl or bust. I mean, you return a Super Bowl winning team, you expect to win the Super Bowl again.
I mean, there's really not much to say about Tampa beyond the fact that their run game still isn't settled, which, I mean, I don't love. But, beyond that, like, the team is the same. They didn't have many offensive additions or any team additions, let alone offense or defense. So it's like, okay, it's the same team. Could they have the same success? Yes, and I think they can have even more success than last year. Maybe they won't drop games to the Saints for no reason. These are all possibilities. But again, Super Bowl or bust with a team that's the same. Like, I know their fingers are trying to look like Tom Brady, but 2 rings is more than a lot of people can say they have.
Absolutely. And when you look at this team, obviously the talent is obvious, but their schedule isn't the most difficult this year, which again just helps their case because teams like the Packers do have a very difficult schedule this year, which is especially since there's only one bye now with the new playoff format, that could impact them a lot. And listen, I have them coming away with the first seed, and as do you in the NFC. I mean, the talent on this roster, can't deny. And now that Tom Brady is settled on this team, he's been with them a full year, he's going to be a lot more confident, or not confident, but he's going to be a lot more comfortable in the system right away. They're going to be hitting their stride, picking up right where they left off, starting in week 1 against your Dallas Cowboys.
That's a conversation for another time.
So, this is a scary team. This is definitely a scary team, especially when they have Tom Brady, who, you all know I'm not the biggest fan of his actual skill level. I think he's a very talented quarterback. Don't think he's the most talented quarterback of all time. But I don't understand people who do. I don't think that's really debatable that he's not the best or the most talented quarterback of all time. But, there's just something about his leadership and the way whenever he steps onto the field, you can't deny. I mean, the other team has an advantage. And, it's not necessarily how good of a player he is. It's just, I don't know. It's not really, it's an intangible. And it's crazy because he's such a good leader and such a good field general in the best in NFL history. So I have their ceiling as 15-2, their floor as 11-6. However, that floor is reach, right? I mean, that floor is just pretty much a formality. I have their prediction, the record prediction at 13-4. That's my best record prediction in the NFC. Second to my more accurate record prediction for the Packers is 12-5. So 13-4, number 1 in the NFC.
I mean, people may not remember, but At the beginning of last year, Tampa didn't look very good. They looked
Mm.
like, oh my goodness, this is like, what the hell? This is a great team, but they're not performing well. What's wrong? Everyone hitting the panic button. Not in Tampa. Everything's chill in Tampa. They showed up, did a great job. So they're definitely going to come out in stride, showing that like same team, same chemistry, same goal. Run it back, not I don't remember what the Chiefs one was. It's completely different. But either ceiling at 16-1. I know Tom Brady wants 17-0, but there's always going to be a trap game at some point. And then their floor is 12-5. Again, eerily similar to Sam's, but it's common fact that this is argued like the best team in the National Football League. And my prediction: 14-3, winning the division and crowning the best team in the NFC. Which again, talent gap is big from, in my opinion, any other team. Like it's decently big. So then my MVP, we have Tom Brady again. Like I don't really know what more you want me to, like what more there is to say. The guy threw 50 touchdowns last year. I'm sure he'll do more of the same. So I think it goes to him. My breakout player is Vita Vea. Like you may argue like it's not a breakout. In my opinion, he is. I think he still has a lot more to show the league. I'm not saying sacks because, everyone loves their basic fact. Is he getting sacks? Is he getting touchdowns? Like, no, that is not a metric to weigh players because that's why in the top NFL 100, there's no offensive lineman in the top 30. Boom, roasted. I don't know why there's no offensive lines out of the top 30. That is disrespectful.
Yeah, Quentin Nelson he can't be in the top 30. I mean,
he didn't score a single touchdown.
David Bakhtiari, he didn't score 10 touchdowns.
He's bad. So there's that for you. And then best addition, Sam and I have the same one because they had like 5 total additions this offseason. Jalen Darden out of North Texas. He was the best player, in my opinion, coming out of Conference USA. Just relax for a second. And I think he led the nation in receiving yards, like total Div 1 college, not Power 5, because Conference USA is not Power 5. But he had statistically a very good year. But again, when you don't play in a Power 5 school, it's a lot harder to get credit for your stats.
Yeah, like you said, best ad for me, Jalen Darden. Also, I really feel like Jalen Darden is going to be pretty much the only new addition to the team that they actually kind of use. Like Darden is now I know a lot of people may think this sounds like Scotty Miller, but Scotty Miller is much more of just a fast player. Jalen Darden is very quick. He's very agile. He's got a lot of run after catch potential. And Bruce Arians, who regardless of, how good of an overall player you are, he likes to spread the ball around. He likes to use the specific strengths of his players to the advantage of the overall team. He really digs deep into that depth, especially of the wide receiver corps like we saw last year. So I think Darden is going to get more touches than a lot of people are expecting him to. And, nothing earth-shattering. It's a similar situation to the Bears. Nothing earth-shattering, but I think he will have a pretty, solid, respectable season, but not a lot of options here. Then my breakout player is going to be Tyler Johnson, wide receiver from second-year player from Minnesota. This was another day 3. Yeah, this was another day 3 guy from 2020 who I really liked coming out of college. He's a very reliable player, great hands. We saw that a lot last year. He made some really good catches. Just one is coming to mind when he was up against the Saints. Tom Brady threw a rocket back shoulder. It was low on a comeback route. And Tyler Johnson made a great adjustment, caught it with tip of his fingers and hauled it in, held on to the catch while he was diving. Just an exceptional grab and one of many that he has made that really proved to me and show top tier talent potential, or maybe not elite talent potential, but starting potential that he has. In times he showed up for this team, and Bruce Arians really likes this guy, and I think he's going to be utilized a lot more this season. Hence why I have him breaking out. And then, like we said, the season goal, it's win or go home. It's win the Super Bowl or no dice, similar to the Packers. If they don't win the Super Bowl, a complete disappointment and a complete failure.
Not much more to say beyond that. This is the team to contend with in the National Football League. Now, the Carolina Panthers, they had quite an eventful offseason, if you will. I mean, I wouldn't actually, eventful is probably not the word for it, but I'd say that they're a very surprising team, a team that in past years people have ruled out automatically. But this year, there are some like very bright spots. I mean, we can look at Sam Darnold, which is a massive upgrade from Teddy Bridgewater, who we'll get into next week. But there's a legitimate chance that while I don't think they could be a very good football team. Their offense looks great. Sam Darnold, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Terrence Marshall Jr., great. Backfield, they have Christian McCaffrey, best in the game, unless you want to really talk Derrick Henry, which is a legitimate argument, and Chuba Hubbard, who coming out of Oklahoma State was a lot higher expectations during the season, but didn't really pan out that way in college football. And then their defense looks very solid. So it's unfortunate that they play in this like a top 3 division in the National Football League, because if you stuck them in a few other divisions, I would say this is a playoff contending team. But, you know, I think that because they have such a tough schedule, they will not make the playoffs, which is very unfortunate for a very talented roster.
The Panthers this year are kind of like my team that I'm like taking under my wing and like rooting for this year, just because of how much I love what they did this offseason. I love the Sam Darnold move. I can't tell you how much I love that move because, listen, he has potential. And if you actually watch Jets games, and like I'm sure most of I know. Yeah, only us who live in New York when we're flipping through channels, right? If you actually watch Jets games, like I'm sure most of the guys who gave most of the Darnold slander on Instagram didn't actually watch those Jets games. He has a lot of potential. I mean, he makes some really good plays, some really, really good plays at times with his legs, with his arm. He shows elite talent potential, but he couldn't get it done with the Jets. And, you know, it's obvious why. They have no offensive line. They had barely any receivers. I mean, the receivers he was working with were like undrafted players. It was not good, not a good situation for the Jets there. And also he had no defensive help to take the pressure off of him. And on top of that, he had Adam Gase, who's not a good coach. And that was the second system he had to learn from in his career. So it was just a complete mess for Sam Darnold on the Jets. And now with the Panthers and it couldn't be the more opposite for the Panthers. They have Christian McCaffrey, 2,000 yards from scrimmage in 2019. Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, 2 1,000-yard receivers. Terrence Marshall Jr., second-round wide receiver, big body guy, very versatile, excellent pick. And then a really underrated offensive line and a very underrated tackle in Taylor Moton. He's really good, and this defense is great. This is a really good team that's very underrated, that I think has a lot of upside, as I think their ceiling is 11-6. So there's a lot of upside to this team, especially if Sam Darnold capitalizes on that potential. I expect this defense to break out too, though. They've got a lot of talent on this team, and I'm really excited to see what they can do. And
again, Carolina is a team that is sadly not going to do great this year, but they're a team that can get the 14th overall pick, have a decent amount of cap room, make some moves, and then all of a sudden next year, boom, they can contend for a playoff spot for the first time in 7 years at that point. But I don't know why. There's something like holding me back beyond the schedule that's like the Panthers won't make it. Is it because I'm a little hesitant on Sam Darnold? Yeah, maybe. I think Sam Darnold's going to do a fine job and be similar to Jared Goff in LA, where it's like he could get it done, but he might not. Like, you never really know. So I guess I'd say that's the only real thing that's kind of like my only burden on Carolina, which is why I have their ceiling at 11-6, because this is a team that, like, make no mistake, could take Minnesota's spot in the playoffs. I wouldn't be shocked if that was a possibility. Again, and they have their floor at 8-9. I think they're going to go 9-8, probably be around 500 and contend next year for a playoff spot. And then in a few years, if Sam Darnold pans out, you're looking very good.
Absolutely. We both have this team finishing at 9-8. And I think that's a good spot for them right now. I think they're going to show a lot of potential. And I think they're going to be one of those teams that shows that they will absolutely be a playoff team next year, right? With all their young talent on defense, with all those star skill position players on offense. And then, I think Darnold will show potential there too and have a good year. I think they're going to go 9-8, get a good draft pick, and show that they will make the playoffs in 2022. That's what I think this year will be for Carolina. We also both have them missing the playoffs. My MVP for this team this year is going to be Christian McCaffrey, returning back to form in 2019. This is absolutely the best or top 2 running back in the NFL, can get it done. Hand him the ball, if you pass him the ball. And also Sam Darnold is a quarterback who is going to benefit greatly from having a reliable back in the backfield. And I expect Joe Brady to take advantage of that because that's not something Darnold has ever had before. So really relying on that on McCaffrey is going to be a luxury. Now the breakout player, I have 2 players written down here. I have Sam Darnold and Brian Burns, because Brian Burns, I think, is ready to break onto the scene as an absolute monster of an edge rusher. He showed a lot of high-level play in training camp this year, at the end of last year, and overall last 2 years of his career have been really good. They've been really good years, but now he's ready. I've seen enough from him to say to me that this guy this year is going to be a top 10 edge rusher in the league. That's how good he is. That's how much I think he will break out in this coming season. Then the best ad I have is Hassan Reddick / Terrace Marshall Jr. I see both these having really good complementary years. Hassan Reddick, I think, will be a nice complement to Brian Burns, a nice refresher kind of coming off the other edge. Look for him to have around 7-8 sacks, similar to last year. And then Terrace Marshall Jr. is going to be a very, very solid third wide receiver option for Sam Darnold. Somewhere around 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, I think, is a good mark for him. He's definitely going to have an impact right away.
I mean, that's completely fair. My MVP, I tried to not be so similar to Sam in a lot of these because he filled it out earlier, but it's no problem. So my MVP, I probably would have picked Christian McCaffrey, but another one I think is Robbie Anderson. Again, a guy that probably will get 1,000 yards and grab more than 5 touchdowns. Then breakout player, I think goes to Sam Darnold, who suffered a lot in a terrible New York sports team, and now is going to Carolina where he can thrive in a system that actually cares about him. And then their best ad, in my opinion, is J.C. Horn. I think that's a area that needed to be addressed for Carolina. Like their defense is very good. With J.C. Horn, it makes that defense better. He may not be the best addition like this year. He might not be the immediate impact rookie. But again, Carolina doesn't need an immediate impact rookie. They're not looking for sure, other fans want them to make the playoffs. But realistically, from a management perspective, that's not what's important this year. It's important that they develop him. And I think that J.C. Horn can be easily developed. And as we see the season goal, it's kind of just to compete. If you got a wild card spot, good for you. And develop Sam Darnold and get him comfortable for the next however many years are going to keep him there. Make him the franchise quarterback. I think those are 2 very realistic goals for Carolina.
Now, with the third team in the NFC South, not necessarily in any order, we have the New Orleans Saints. And the big thing for them is how would they fare without Drew Brees? It's their first year without Drew Brees in a very, very long time. Now they have Jameis Winston at the helm. And not only is it about losing Drew Brees, but it's also about, can Jameis Winston revive his career? This is going to be a fun team to watch because Jameis has a big arm. We saw it in the preseason. We saw it with the Bucs, and he's a good player. It's just he turns the ball over so much. If he did it, I know this is a massive asterisk, But if he didn't turn over the ball so much, he'd be an elite quarterback with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Still,
100%.
100%. But you can't say without the interception, because obviously that's a huge issue. That's all there is. But I mean, if he can fix that this year, the Saints might have a franchise quarterback.
I mean, I like Jameis Winston like a lot in Tampa Bay, like 30 for 30, like 30-30. That just was bad. But I know 30 interceptions is like a blaringly high number, but like if you can ignore that, he led the league in passing yards. So
Over 30 touchdowns. I mean,
yeah, but if you want to look at the bright side, even though there's like a massive luggage going along with him, Jameis Winston's out there playing Madden. Shoot, my wide receiver's going to be up there somewhere. But if you look at Tampa, they had Mike Evans. He could throw it up to Mike Evans. That's what Johnny Manziel did. And in New Orleans, like, you don't have Mike Evans. You have Michael Thomas in a month and a half, maybe.
In a month and a half, yeah.
It's a key word there. And Marquez Callaway, we're gonna probably talk about him in like literally right after this. He looks very good, but he's not Mike Evans and Traquan Smith. Like, they showed flashes in the preseason, but it's not gonna be like in Tampa Bay where you had the luxury of throwing it up. Shoot, my wide receiver's gonna be open there somewhere. You actually have to make a read. Can Jameis Winston do that? I don't know. I kind of feel like he's spending time.
Can he make a read?
Can he make? No. I don't know. Can he make a read?
You know what? That's a good point, because 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. It kind of seems like it might be a guessing game for him.
What button shows up on the screen first? I'm pressing.
Exactly. So you know what? Honestly, that's a really good point, because not only do you have Mike Evans there, but you have Mike Evans, who's a 6'5" wide receiver, probably the best jump ball wide receiver in the game. You know, Julio Jones could be in that conversation also, but Mike Evans is definitely top 3 jump ball, red zone threat wide receiver in the game right now. So that is obviously a huge bonus. You don't have that with the Saints. I mean, Michael Thomas might be coming back. I was talking about last week on my podcast. Who knows what's going on with Michael Thomas? I mean, there were reports that he wants out. He wasn't answering the coach's texts. It's very dramatic. I mean, it's very dramatic. And for what reason, we don't really know. So I don't know. Maybe just put a pin in that until he gets off the PUP list. But he's on that for now. So it means he will at least miss the first 6 weeks of the NFL season. So that first, even more than the first quarter of the year, we're going to get a good taste of what Jameis Winston is without Michael Thomas. Also, week 1, he goes up against Packers, who went to the NFC Championship last year. So that'll be another interesting thing to see how he fares against a playoff team from last year. Also a team that, if the Saints do get to the playoffs, they might have to face off against. So, yeah, Traquan Smith and Marquez Callaway as your 2 top wide receivers, very different than Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I mean, a complete 180. So but on the flip side, you also have Sean Payton in a great offensive line, which he did not have in Tampa. Sean Payton, sorry, mixed up. Which he did not have in Tampa Bay. So there's a lot up in the air with Jameis Winston, and their whole season rides on it, because they've got a good defense. Their defense won't carry them, but if the offense can be good as well, this will be a playoff team. Absolutely. So it really rests on Jameis Winston's shoulders whether they're a playoff team or not.
I mean, it's really that. I mean, they didn't really have so many great offseason additions. In my list, I'll spoil it right now. My best offseason addition is none. I don't think they're gonna have anyone that has like
same.
And I could not think of a single, like, I even looked at the transaction wire. I'm like, none of this is gonna help me.
I'm pretty sure all their starters were the same, like the Bucks, because they were screwed with cap. They were like 50 million over.
Oh yeah, they were. Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah. It's gonna be like the Packers next year.
And just the Saints, they're mediocre all of a sudden. And Jameis Winston, whether it's Jameis Winston and he gets yanked for Taysom Hill, like, I still don't love this team. And I don't think that they will make the playoffs. They're a team that will be mediocre and maybe be a game or 2 games out. I wouldn't put it past them. But I don't think this is a team that can contend. It's not going to be the same team with Drew Brees, where it's like, Drew Brees, you never know. He's Batman or Bruce Wayne, and whatever that quote was all about with Jameis Winston. I hate to bring this up, but I don't want to hear another Jameis Winston post-game interview. It's terrible. What is he talking about? I don't get it.
Imagine if they beat the Packers week 1, that post-game interview will be something else.
Now I'm all of a sudden rooting for the Packers week 1. So
yeah,
for my MVP, I have Cameron Jordan. This is one of the premier edge rushers in the National Football League, Pro Bowler. I think he can have an all-pro year and be the MVP of the Saints. Breakout star, I think Cesar Ruiz, the guard. I think they need immediate impact at the guard position, and I think the first rounder from 2 years ago, I want to say, can provide just that. I should probably search that up, but he was a first rounder, and I think that
it was last year.
Regardless, he'll provide great protection to Jameis Winston, who might need some glasses. If you need glasses, let us know. I mean, he had LASIK, but I don't know how much.
Yeah, because we here at First and Goal can hit you up with glasses.
You can get your glasses.
For my MVP, it's going to be Alvin Kamara. I think Alvin Kamara is going to even have a better year this year than he had last year, because Sean Payton, knowing who he's got at quarterback, knowing that not only does Jameis Winston take a lot of risks, knowing that he's not only a wild card player, but also knowing that it's a completely new quarterback. You want to get him comfortable. You want to get him confident. I think we're going to see a lot of handoffs, and we're also going to see a lot of checks downs, which is obviously all Alvin. Or maybe I know it sounds stupid.
Check down?
It sounds stupid coming out of my mouth. Maybe I think. Let me rephrase. I think we're going to see I think we're going to see a lot of design screens and a lot of designed quick plays to Alvin Kamara, so that Sean Payton can sleep at night knowing that he's got the design play going, to getting the ball into Alvin Kamara's hand quickly. Sean Payton is going to want to get Alvin Kamara the ball as much as possible, because he doesn't have Drew Brees to rely on to make the smart decision. So I think a lot of the time Sean Payton will make that decision a little bit more for Jameis Winston. Say, design, you're throwing it to Kamara on this play. He's going to run the wheel route. And I think he's going to get a lot of receptions, a lot of receiving yards, and a good amount of receiving touchdowns as well. So that's my MVP for the team. Breakout is going to be Marquez Callaway. Yeah, this is kind of just the same thing that everyone else has been spitting out for the last couple of weeks. But listen, it looks right. I mean, Marquez Callaway right now is set to be their second wide receiver on the depth chart, and Traquan Smith is above him. So it's not even like he's set locked at that number 2 spot. If he can, have a couple of games, he could move up to that number 1 spot wide receiver slot on the depth chart. So regardless, though, he will be starting for at least the first 6 weeks. He'll be a starting wide receiver. So this is a guy we're going to see get a lot of targets, because obviously we saw in the preseason already, him and Winston have a pretty good connection with those 2 outstanding touchdown plays versus the Jaguars. So this is a guy that you should really be looking out for to make some noise on the New Orleans Saints. Also showed a lot of potential in a couple games last year, especially against the Panthers. My best ad, I have nobody. I'm 100% or 99.9% positive that all the guys that they brought back, or all the guys that they are starting, were on the roster last year. And if any of them weren't, they're all minor players. So best ad, if you count Jameis Winston as an ad, sure. Jameis Winston, the best ad for the New Orleans Saints. No, he was there last year, but new starter. So the season goal for them is compete for a wild card spot. Similar to the Panthers, compete for a wild card spot. If you get it, great. How much noise are they going to make? I don't know, but you know what? They're not going to win the division with Tampa. And they're a fringe playoff team, but I don't see them making the playoffs. I have them going 8-9, as do you.
I mean, they're a pretty mediocre team in my eyes. Speaking to a team that isn't mediocre, the Atlanta Falcons. Not much really happened with them this offseason. Like beyond Julio, actually that's pretty big. Julio left, in case those that forgot. Sam did an episode at that while I don't know what I was doing, maybe something else. But this is a team right now that does not look very good. Does not look like a fun team. It's just Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, who I know this isn't a fantasy episode, but everyone is way too high on fantasy wise. I think you're being absurd. But another conversation for when he ends up not being too great. But they got Kyle Pitts, who looks very intriguing. This is a team within and Mike Davis, who I love, but this is a team within the next few years that could be back to contending. But it's not their year. They're not that guy. Okay, it's not what this is this year. Their defense is somehow worse. Their offense is also worse. They maybe have a better coach, but their team is not better.
Yeah, this is a team like the Chicago Bears, like we were talking about. It is pretty much a tweener team. They have guys like Matt Ryan who are up there, and they're good players, but on bigger contracts. Also, Grady Jarrett, who is starting to get there up there in age, much more expensive player. Deion Jones, who's definitely a younger player, but he's a really good player right now, and he's getting to his prime, or he's already in his prime. So another player that should be looking to start winning now. On the flip side, they have guys like AJ Terrell, Kyle Pitts, Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, not Mike Davis, but Chris Lindstrom, who are younger with potential. Calvin Ridley already star, but younger with potential, who could be stars and could be a nice core for their team. And they're not going to win. So I think the mistake on their part was drafting Kyle Pitts over Justin Fields. Because if you draft Justin Fields over Kyle Pitts, it's a rebuild, right? The rebuild has begun. You have your future franchise quarterback. You tear down the house and you go with the rebuild. What they did in drafting a tight end, yes, I understand he's Kyle Pitts. He's not just a tight end. However, they would have kept Matt Ryan anyway, but I think that would have been beneficial for Fields to learn under Ryan for a year. By doing this, you just add a tight end and a really good pass catcher to the mix, right? Think of it this way. If you were rebuilding and you were starting from base level, right? Think of the Lions. It wouldn't make sense if the Lions drafted a wide receiver round 1 when they needed offensive tackle, or it wouldn't have made sense if the Lions drafted a wide receiver round 1 when an elite offensive tackle or an elite quarterback was available, right? That wouldn't have made sense because it's the order of importance when it comes to positions. I feel like the Falcons messed up with that here, right? They need to rebuild. They're not going to win anytime soon. They're not going to win with this core roster, and they need to move on. All they're doing right now is delaying it. Nothing good is going to come from delaying it. In fact, you're only going to waste the time of players like Kyle Pitts and AJ Terrell, which is obviously a bad thing. So by drafting Justin Fields, you start the rebuild. By drafting Kyle Pitts is much more of a win now move, or a team that is ready to start moving in that direction, not a team that's about to start a rebuild.
I mean, yeah, this is a team that, again, heading into the season with Julio Jones, maybe looked a little better, but now it's kind of like, okay, this isn't good. This isn't a compromising situation in Georgia. So again, I have them finishing 5-12. This is not a team that's ready to contend. This is a very bottom tier team for the first time in what feels like actually a very long time, because for the past couple of years with Julio and Matt Ryan, the Falcons have always been like up here, but now they're kind of down here since they lost Julio. I'm not saying Julio is the reason for this, but kind of just happened coincidentally. Their MVP, my opinion, Calvin Ridley, he will be the best player on that roster heading into next year. Without a doubt. Breakout, Russell Gage, great wide receiver 3. Kind of broke out a little last year, but we could see him taking a nice wide receiver 2 role and could be up for an 800-yard season, maybe 2-3 touchdowns, looks pretty good. And then their best offseason addition is Mike Davis. I think Mike Davis actually landed a great spot. Now look, Todd Gurley last year, his red zone usage and like his usage and stuff and his stats were like very good. And I think will fit Mike Davis perfectly. In the red zone, the Falcons ran it so many times last year. It was phenomenal. So Todd Gurley looked bad. He could not break up for a long run. But if you need to get the 5 yards, Mike Davis will do that for you. And if you're on the goal line, I'm trusting Mike Davis over any running back they could have gotten in free agency. And Mike Davis had a great year, and they got him at a good price, also a receiving back.
Yeah, I definitely think Mike Davis is a very good ad and definitely an under the radar player. I think Kyle Pitts is a better ad though. I just, picked on that
Just crapped on him.
selection. Yeah, picked on that selection a little bit. However, we can't deny Kyle Pitts is a little bit of a freak. He's a great receiver, at least was in college, and no reason to suggest why that wouldn't continue in the NFL, especially with a great or a very good now quarterback in Matt Ryan. So I think that will continue. I think we see a very good year from him. My breakout pick is going to be AJ Terrell. I could also go with Russell Gage or Foye Sada. I'm going to Foye Sada Aluakon. Yeah.
I'm so good at pronouncing this. Let's go.
Yeah. You probably practiced that one. So I could go with Aluakon or Russell Gage, but I wanted to go with Terrell here because as a corner, we talked about this with Okuda. It's very difficult to have a good rookie year. And, later in that rookie season, he really started to come on and he put on some really good performances. He put on some really good performances. And I think that's going to just continue into this year. I mean, he's going to carry over the momentum, prove that he's a good starting NFL cornerback for the Atlanta Falcons. Going on to the NFC West, arguably the best division in football. Kicking it off, we have the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks are such a difficult team to talk about because it feels that their roster, or at least their core players, rarely change or have changed over the last decade. They still have Bobby Wagner. They still got Russell Wilson. Tyler Lockett was with some of those teams in like 2016, 2017. So they've got a lot of the same core players, but it feels like the same thing happens to them every year. Like they either get to the divisional round or the conference championship and lose and then, repeat, right? Have a start out fine, finish strong, make a semi-deep playoff run, lose and repeat. And I feel like not enough people are talking about, I feel like so much attention has been on how that's the pattern for the Packers that this year, not a lot of people are talking about that for the Seahawks. Really more people should, because when are they going to get back to the Super Bowl? They've got Russell Wilson. They've got, the offensive talent. Bobby Wagner's still there. They've got Jamal Adams. Their defense wasn't good last year, but when are they going to make that move again? I don't see a way that they are going to get drastically better that's going to push them ahead. So it's similar to the Packers, similar to the Bucks. It's a winner Super Bowl or it's a disappointment, because if you don't win a Super Bowl, it's just like the same exact season that you've had for the last 5 years. They've made the playoffs, I think, for the last 8 seasons, something like that. They have a really long streak. Yeah, 8 years. They have a really long streak. And 8 years, 2013, when was it? 2014, 2015 was the last Super Bowl?
2013.
2000,
where they beat Peyton Manning.
Yeah. Oh, right. When they won. Yeah, 2013.
That's the last time they won. Last time they were in it was 2014.
Right. 2000. Yeah. Yeah. I saw that. That was a little interesting. Signs with the Cardinals and then retires. But the last time they won was 2013, 8 years ago, which, yeah, great for them. You won 8 years ago, but don't you want to win again? I mean, it's the same season every single year. And they didn't improve really this season. But it doesn't matter because it's win a Super Bowl or disappointment, because if they don't win a Super Bowl, it's no different than any other year than they've had in the past.
I'm fed up with Seattle. This is like the year, like, I'm done. Like, I'm convinced that they are not making the playoffs this year
Wow.
for the first time.
Not
No.
even making it?
No, I'm done. I don't want to hear it. Their defense is still not good. Their offensive line is still not good. I get it. You have Russell Wilson, but you can't have him running for his life every single play. Yeah, you look at the NFC West, they play 6 times a year. Their front sevens are outstanding. Every single team. Russell Wilson is going to be running for his life. And I get it. Against some teams, he can scramble 10 yards back, throw it up. DK Metcalf's going to get it. You can't do that on Jalen Ramsey. You can't do that on certain secondaries. Like, I'm fed up. I'm done. I don't think this is a good team. They're not a good team right now anyway. They could be. But, when you had in your 3rd round pick, you picked Dwayne Eskridge, who is speedy, fast. Is that really your number one need? Is that really what you should have been targeting? Like, give me a break, Pete Carroll. Like, I don't think he should be fired because I think he's a very good coach. But, like, what are you trying to do here? Like, I don't know what Seattle is trying to do. There's nothing there that says they want to compete. They're just telling me, I'm just there. Fans are going to go to games because, we have Bobby Wagner and Russell Wilson. Yeah, but you don't have enough wins in the win column.
Also, you brought up the cornerback, or not, you didn't bring it up, but you brought up their draft pick for a second. Why didn't they take a corner? They lost Shaquille Griffin this offseason, who massively overpaid, but still a good cornerback option for them for the last few years. Definitely a good corner. Now their corners are Akello Witherspoon, who's an underrated player, but like a good corner 3. Then you have DJ Reed, who's another underrated player, but a good depth guy. And these are your starting corners. And you didn't feel the need to address it at all? At all? Instead, you went out and got another explosive receiver? I'm sorry. None of it makes sense to me. And you really have to ask yourself, think about it. If they miss the playoffs, or if they're the 7th seed in their first round exit, or even if they're just a wild card team in their first round exit, or they miss the playoffs, what then? Do they move on from Pete Carroll? Well, that doesn't even seem like a thought, just because of how good of a coach he is and how much success he's brought to Seattle. Do you move on from Russell Wilson? The obvious answer seems no, but he might be unhappy there. I mean, there was rumors. Yeah, I mean, there were rumors and rumblings that he might want out this offseason. What if this thing where they get a first round exit or they miss the playoffs altogether happens again next year? Would he absolutely want out then? So there's a lot of things in question with the Seahawks. The drama that we thought might have ended this summer definitely didn't end. It is absolutely continuing. And it also doesn't help that they've got the Cardinals, the 49ers, and the Rams to contend with, all of which, you said it, have excellent defenses. So my MVP is going to be Russell Wilson, a guy where, if he's not your choice for MVP, this team is pretty much just wrong. He's a great quarterback, puts up great numbers, and produces every single year. My breakout player for this team, this was tough because this is a team filled with, pretty established players. But if I had to pick someone, I don't know, it's tough. I'd probably pick Dwayne Eskridge, their rookie wide receiver, because David Moore is out as their slot wide receiver, and Dwayne Eskridge fills the role very well. They've been successful drafting wide receivers in recent memory. You got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett, I feel like, is a better comparison to Dwayne Eskridge. Not necessarily playing style, but where they were drafted, what their expectations are coming in. And I think Dwayne Eskridge might surprise a bunch of people. I don't think he's going to break out and be a superstar. Again, this is kind of an if I had to pick someone situation, but I think Eskridge is going to play better than a lot of people expect him to do.
I mean, I don't really think Dwayne Eskridge has really any expectations. So I think he really gets to set the bar. So I think that MVP Russell Wilson, again, no real reason this guy's going to clutch up and be the reason Seattle can pull off a playoff run. And then breakout, I think Quandre Diggs. Again, I kind of ripped on their secondary for like quite a little bit. But if anyone's going to really tighten it up and bring it all together, I'd say it would be Quandre Diggs, who had a pretty decent campaign last year, and I think can continue to have another great campaign. And then their best addition is Gerald Everett. I mean, there's not really much. I don't really know how much Russell Wilson throws to his tight ends. I think historically not very much, but this is all subject to change.
Yeah, and then the season goal for them, like we said, it's win the Super Bowl or absolutely go home, and that's it. Full stop. That's it. Then the San Francisco 49ers. This team is expected to return to 2019 form because, pretty much the reason, or really the entire reason that they weren't, in tip-top shape in 2020 was because of all the injuries that they had. Nick Bosa was out all season with injury. Dee Ford was out again all year long with injury. Raheem Mostert only played 8 games. George Kittle only played 8 games. Jimmy Garoppolo was banged up a little bit too. So there were a lot of issues with this team injury-wise. They really caught the injury bug, and very unfortunate it was. But they're coming back healthy now. Can they return to 2019 form and pick up right where they left off? And if the defense can, how does Jimmy Garoppolo play? Because Garoppolo right now, he's in question, and he's under the light. He's under a magnifying glass right now because Trey Lance is waiting right behind him.
I mean, we kind of have to understand that the Niners as you just said, they went to the Super Bowl in 2019. A few people are like, they're in the toughest division, blah, 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 throw it out the window. They're the best team in this division. I don't think it's a question. Their offense has the potential to be a top 10 offense, and their defense can be number 1. They're in a very similar situation to the LA Rams. I'd say that's where I'd compare them to. One of those two teams is probably going to end up winning the division. In my opinion, I think it goes to San Francisco. I like, even as Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback, I like Brandon Ayuk. I like all the receivers. I like the running backs, like who they have there. I like Raheem Mostert, Trey Sermon, whoever else they end up bringing in there. It ends up working. The offensive line, I like a lot. Just their schemes, it's all very good. And for that reason, I have the Niners ranked as the division winner with a 14-3 record. I understand that seems a little high, but if any team is going to bulldoze everybody, it's going to be the Niners. But funny enough, in a schedule prediction, I'd say the Rams beat them twice, but overall, the Niners would have a better record and would clinch the NFC West.
Yeah, I definitely understand that, and I could see that happening. I just have them a little bit lower at 11-6 because I think, I could see a little bit of a regression from 2019. Not as, maybe Nick Bosa, not overall as healthy. Dee Ford, same situation. So I think there's something to be said about that, and also Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm just not so sure that he's going to be able to sustain not even the production. He wasn't even that great in 2019. I don't think he's going to be able to play at a level where he can get his team back to the Super Bowl and back to, a 14-3 record like they were in 2019. So I see a more grounded record of 11-6, 12-5 for them this season. And I think they'll be a wild card team. So my MVP for the year for this team is going to be George Kittle. George Kittle is just an absolute beast. And I wouldn't say he's underrated, but people don't talk about him enough. You know what I mean? He's absolutely a top 2 tight end in the league, arguably the best tight end in the league, but he gets overlooked just a little bit, and we can't disrespect him like that. I think the breakout player will be Javon Kinlaw. Kinlaw really came on strong at the end of last season. He also had a great performance against the Rams towards the end of the year. That was kind of his coming out party. Now, with a year under his belt playing in that 49ers front with Nick Bosa and Dee Ford healthy, that's going to take more of the attention away from Kinlaw, which will allow him, the South Carolina alum, to get a lot more one-on-ones, a lot more easy pass to the quarterback, which he's going to take advantage of. This is a very talented player. The best ad for them is Alex Mack, the center, the new acquisition, free agent acquisition from a formerly longtime center for the Atlanta Falcons. This is an excellent center. Really just an overall great player, will help them out in the run and the pass game.
Alex Mack was phenomenal in Atlanta. He was phenomenal in Cleveland. He was phenomenal wherever he was. Absolutely outstanding. And I think that was a great addition by San Francisco. My MVP, I have Nick Bosa again. Can't stress enough how great this defense will be. Coming off an ACL tear, I honestly think that he will probably end up coming second in comeback player of the year voting, probably losing to a slim margin to a guy that we'll talk about later on. And yeah, I think this is a guy that can give Aaron Donald a run for his money for league leading sacks. I think that he has the potential to get 15 plus sacks this year. I have to look in their schedule more deeply for individual player like guesses. I haven't done that, but I think that depending on the offensive line schedule, he can definitely do that. Breakout player Jimmy Ward, you can argue he broke out 2 years ago. I still think he has a lot more potential in him and can become a better coverage safety, get a lot more turnovers, force a lot more incomplete passes. And their best addition, I think, is Trey Sermon. Raheem Mostert, in their committee, I like what they do, but adding Trey Sermon not only makes it better, but with Raheem Mostert potentially getting hurt, some people never return back the same from injuries, which is Sam's main concern with this team. But adding this young Ohio State running back really makes it great. And we all know the last great Ohio State running back to enter the league has been phenomenal. I'm not saying Trey Sermon's going to repeat the same success as Ezekiel Elliott, but, Ohio State's Ohio State.
Another quick fun fact we got here. I just looked up Alex Mack, and surprise, his real name is Javon Alexander Mack. So there's another fun fact for you.
First it's Sack Daddy, now it's Javon.
Yeah, so we gotta listen. We're learning a lot of things here on the First and Goal podcast. Lots of new information. But now getting to the Los Angeles Rams, this is another team where it's all or nothing. They have pushed all their chips into the table the last few years, trading pretty much literally all their picks from 2016 to 2024 to go out and get players to help them win a Super Bowl. Now it's a quarterback in Matt Stafford. Regardless of whether Stafford's the guy or not, it doesn't matter because this team needs to win the Super Bowl just because of how much they've invested into putting a Super Bowl winning team together, right? Stafford is just the latest in a long line of investments, of draft picks, of salary cap into players that have helped them or they hope will help them get back to the Super Bowl and this time win. This year, I think they're going to actually win the division. They've got a great team. Their defense was exceptional last year. And while I don't think Matt Stafford is going to be a top 8 quarterback for them, I think he could be a top 10 quarterback for them, right in that 9-10 spot. Going to be a very good player. I don't see him being an elite quarterback. He'll be a good player, very good player for them, lead them to a 12-5 record and win the division.
I mean, I think this is all that's very achievable. The Rams' success is dependent on Matthew Stafford. There's almost zero that's changed heading into this season except Matt Stafford. So when Matt Stafford sucks, I don't want to hear all these Rams fans coming at me because for some odd reason, I know a whole bunch of them. Oh, Matt Stafford's going to be the best. He's going to be the best. He's going to be the best. What happens when he isn't the best? And the Rams are the same. Oh, well, he's so good. He's so good. Yeah, then why is he only throwing for 3,000 yards when he has Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp? Like, give me a break. He's handing the ball off. Well, no, these are all terrible excuses. And the offensive line for the Rams, I don't love necessarily. Andrew Whitworth is, I don't know, is he retired? He's old, and that just his offensive line just isn't good. So if Matt Stafford can be a top 12 quarterback, they can win the division without a doubt. But if Matt Stafford plays anything sub that, the Niners can get more wins than them. I don't think the Niners are a better team. I just think that they will be able to get more wins, which is actually, now that I think of it, rather interesting. I think that I have them with a higher record than Sam. As a matter of fact, I think they go 13-4 because I think this is a very talented team. I want to give the NFC West some credit, especially regarding like playing each other. I didn't like Seattle. I don't like, and then I'm not going to like the team that's coming up right after the Arizona Cardinals. But this is a team that can win in the 13 win range.
My MVP for this team, none other than the one and only, the great Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is one of the best players in the league, probably overall the best defensive player in the league. He's a beast. And every single year, even if it's a down year for him, he still balls out. I mean, last year wasn't his best year, and he won Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, he's an absolute monster. He's a crazy good talent. He's going to win, or not win MVP, but he's going to be the best player on the Rams this year. My breakout player for them is Van Jefferson. So now Jefferson, coming out of Florida, I'm a big fan of. He's a very refined player, good route running, reliable target. Now he's going to be the Rams' third wide receiver, and he'll get a lot more opportunities in this offense now being a starter. Sean McVay also said a bunch of times that he really likes what Jefferson is bringing to the table, and he's excited to continue to use him in the future. That's not a direct quote, but he has said things like that in the past about Jefferson. The best ad is Matt Stafford, of course, right? Really good quarterback, really talented player. And if there's going to be one thing that pushes them over the edge this year, it's going to be acquiring Stafford.
I mean, exactly. I think that everything you said we're basically at a very on a similar page with a lot of these. Aaron Donald, MVP, he's the best defensive player in the league, and maybe is probably a Hall of Fame lock. I don't want to hear another Rams fan come at me. He's the best defensive player ever. He's the top 5 defensive player ever. You're a fool. You will not believe the amount of Rams people are like, oh, he's the best defensive player of all time.
Who knew there are so many Rams fans in Canada?
I didn't even know. He's better than Bruce Smith. Who's Bruce Smith? That I've heard that.
Genius.
I'm like, Bruce Smith is better than. Who's Bruce Smith? I don't know. Maybe he has 200 career sacks. Just maybe though.
Just maybe. Just a thought. Just a thought.
Reggie White, I don't know, 198. Like, talk to me.
Lawrence Taylor.
MVP. Like, give me a break here. The list goes on. My breakout star is Darius Williams. He broke out a bit last year, but similar to a lot of the other breakout stars, he has not shown his full potential. I think that he has more to show, but I also feel like he's the breakout player that can flop and just, one-time thing, similar to some players that I won't name drop. And then obviously best addition, Matt Stafford. I mean, it's not really close to, like, not at all close. And again, season goal, win the Super Bowl. This is it. Like, the Rams probably can do this thing for like 2 or 3 more years because their team will probably remain the same. They'd be stupid to leave, especially because you live in LA. Like, why wouldn't you want to just stay there? But, this team is relying on a new incomer, which is very similar to the situation we saw with Tom Brady. We had an impact newcomer. I'm not trying to compare the Rams to the Bucs State like a few years ago, but like, it's similar. They're relying on a new income player that can transform a team, that makes a team look good. He made the Detroit Lions look good. No, like, only like 3 players in the history of the National Football League have been able to do that. him, Megatron, and Barry Sanders. Those are the only 3 players that have managed to make the Lions look good. Like, that is an impressive feat.
Absolutely. Now getting to the last team in the NFC West, the Arizona Cardinals. The biggest thing for them is, yes, obviously they want to make the playoffs right now and this year, but Kyler Murray's got to step up. Kyler Murray has had two good years. 2 good years in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. But it's time for him to break out. His 3rd year in the NFL with DeAndre Hopkins as his targets. He's got a lot of weapons for sure on offense. Improved offensive line with Rodney Hudson coming in at center. He's got to break out. He's got to show that he's an elite starting franchise quarterback this year for the Arizona Cardinals, because they spent the 1st overall pick on him. By year 3, he's got to prove to them that he's their franchise going forward.
I mean, I think he's kind of already proved that and locked that spot pretty good, but I understand.
You think?
Like
as a surefire franchise quarterback?
I mean, I think that the Arizona Cardinals would say so. I mean, I couldn't in the next 3 years unless Kyler Murray like completely like goes downhill. But if he goes on like the same pace that he went this year, like I still think in a few years he's the franchise quarterback until his legs aren't very good, which is the problem with quarterbacks like Kyler Murray. Right. But you know, when you look at the Arizona Cardinals from a grand scheme of things, the only reason I don't really have them going into the playoffs, 2 things: 1, top division, and 2, secondary. Teams aren't, there's no smash mouth teams aren't really a thing anymore, which is unfortunate because I prefer the smash mouth football. Teams, especially in that division, are throwing the ball 75% of snaps. So the Cardinals, they have Budda Baker, sure. When they play the Rams, who's covering Cooper Kupp? Who's covering Robert Woods? When they play Seattle, who's covering DK? Who's covering Tyler Lockett? When they're playing the Niners, covering Brandon Ayuk? Who's covering what? Who am I forgetting? Who's wide receiver 2? Deebo Samuel. Like, these are issues that need to be addressed before I can say the Cardinals will make the playoffs. As soon as that happens, like, I have no problem. Saying anything. But can Kyler Murray step up? Will the secondary be able to do any coverage this year? Because they can get sacks, no problem.
Can they do coverage?
I don't know. Can they do coverage?
Yeah, and then Budda Baker is also much more of a box safety, right? He comes up, he plays the run, he hits you. Great, all good stuff. But their coverage isn't that great in the back end, and that's obviously an issue in such a great division, in such a pass-heavy league. I have my ceiling for them at 11-6 and my floor at 8-9. So anywhere from a very good, solid season to a mediocre, average season. I predict they're going to go 10-7 though, which is a good record, right? That's good. In a normal division, it would be good enough to get them into the wild card spot, but it's not here in the NFC West. I actually have 3 playoff teams in this division. Arizona Cardinals. Listen, they're a really good squad. It's just they just missed the mark.
I mean, I think that this is a team that's like in the 500-ish range, which is very unfortunate, and it more so has to do with the division that they're in. I'm sorry that the NFL's realignment, like, that's kind of the way it is. If you were the Chicago Cardinals, I'd say you're in the playoffs, but because you're the Arizona Cardinals, you're not. I mean, I have them at their floor 10-7, floor 8-9. I have the record 9-8. Like, literally 1, 2, 3. It's going to be one of those 3. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt of just being slightly over 500.
My MVP for this team is going to be DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is, in my opinion, the 2nd best wide receiver in the league, second only to Davante Adams, of course. But Hopkins, yeah, absolutely. Adams is just a ridiculous route runner. But Hopkins can't be overlooked either. I mean, he's a great route runner. He's got the best hands in the league, exceptional receiver, going to be the best player on this team, no question. Breakout, I have Isaiah Simmons. Simmons didn't really play a lot last year because the Cardinals were more so grooming him, developing him, getting him comfortable with the system. All good. Now he's going to be a starter. This is a super athletic sideline to sideline linebacker that also can play safety. He played safety in college. Now he's going to break out. I really believe that because of the athleticism he's got at that linebacker position. He reminds me a lot of a Devin White type guy. He's just so fast, so athletic, will kill you with his speed, just attacks the ball so fast. He got taken 8th overall for a reason, and I think he's really going to show how good he is this year. Then my best addition is Rodney Hudson. Rodney Hudson, he's a Pro Bowl player. I mean, he's a bona fide Pro Bowl center. This guy is an incredible player, and it's absolutely insane how the Cardinals got him for a 3rd and a 5th. I mean, it's an absolute steal.
And the Raiders kind of just sold their offensive line. They went from like a very good trade destination to why would any quarterback want to go there? I think that's kind of what happened with Russell Wilson. But MVP, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be a top 2 wide receiver in the National Football League. Whether you take Sam's word for it, him being 2, or if you take his word for it, him being 1, it kind of doesn't really matter. He's still going to be near the top of the league, in my opinion, regardless of how Kyler Murray plays. He's similar to Allen Robinson. He will make every quarterback he plays with look good. Now, breakout player of the year, I think that this is going to be quite an interesting one. I forgot to write it, but off the top of my head, there's one player that I think can have a very big presence on this team. And that's not a big presence on any team in 7 years. I think that AJ Green will have the best year he's had in 7 years.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to be better than he was on the Bengals in the past 7 years. I think he's going to play all 16 games, which is a bold statement within itself.
No way. Hold on. We're looking at a stat from 7 years ago. Okay, 7 years ago, 2013. Okay, 2013, he had 98 receptions, 1,400 yards, and 11 touchdowns. You think he's getting anywhere near that this year?
I'm talking about somewhere not in that range, but the best season since then. He hasn't had a good season since.
Okay. Year after that, 69 receptions, 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. Goodness. You think he's getting anywhere near that?
The year after that, how did he play in 2015? How many games did he play in 2015?
2016. Oh, 2015 is even better. 86 receptions, 1,300 yards,
AJ
10 touchdowns.
He will be back. Because in
Really?
the past few years, have you heard his name? Have you drafted him in fantasy football?
No.
Exactly.
And that's going to continue.
Oh, now with Kyler Murray. But with Kyler Murray,
don't give me that. He's done. He's done.
We'll see done. When he catches 50 receptions, 800 yards.
AJ Green is the next Isaiah Hodgins.
Don't disrespect him. Don't you dare. When Cole Beasley and Gabe Davis are out with COVID, and Isaiah Hodgins takes the lead in the storm with 0 receptions, get on my level. And then I think that the best impact newcomer is not AJ Green, but it will be JJ Watt. Pairing him, not him individually, because individual presence is substantial, but him alongside with Chandler Jones just makes the Cardinals a lot scarier. They're a 4-6 team. That's a formation for those that are not aware. I'm not saying they will go 4-6, which I would not rule out of the equation.
The season goal for the Cardinals, make the playoffs would be the goal. It's okay if they don't, just because of how tough of the division they're in. But, at some point, they're just going to have to make the playoffs, regardless of their division. Their division isn't going to really get any easier anytime soon, unless the Seahawks dismantle. But, I don't see that really happening. So at some point, they're just going to have to buckle down and make the playoffs. For me, also, just a little thing, have Murray show he's elite, right? Get him to that point to make him show that he's an elite quarterback. And I understand he was really good last year. 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, almost 4,000 yards. That's a good season, really good season, but not quite elite. And when you take a guy first overall, 3 years in, you want him to be elite by then. So that's the goals for the Arizona Cardinals. That is going to wrap it up for this episode of the First and Goal podcast. Thank you guys for joining me and Mitch here on our first episode back for season 2 of the First and Goal podcast with Sam and Mitch. We know we left out the NFC East. We did that on purpose. We will get to that either later in the week or next week. So do not worry. We will be coming to you with all our predictions. Also, don't forget, AFC predictions are coming up at the end of next week as well. So until next time, Sam and Mitch signing off.